What if I told you that you could learn how to have an out-of-body experience? Would this interest you? Does it bring up any curiosity? How about some fears? Maybe you're afraid those demons are going to get you. What would be the value in your life of doing such a thing? Is it even worth it? And how do you even go about that? How is that even possible? Well, if this is at all of any curiosity to you, you're going to absolutely love my guest today. I bring on the CEO of the Monroe Institute, Allyn Evans.
I want you to go have the experiences. I want you to come tell me, because it's not just somebody up here chatting away, telling you this can be real. It's for, we want you to experience it for yourself.
The Monroe Institute's been around for quite a while, and since the 70s, they've been teaching people how to have these experiences amongst many other programs that are designed to help a person have a better relationship with themselves and life. What I found fascinating is that one of the biggest things that people found as a benefit of having the OBE, out-of-body experience, is a lack of the fear of death. If you want to learn more about OBEs, then stay tuned for today's episode. I'm your host, Eric Coplen, and welcome to another episode of the Music of Life podcast. Allyn Evans, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. So you are now the CEO of the Monroe Institute.
Yes.
And we know each other from a number of years ago when I was getting started in the whole marketing world, and we worked together on some projects with some doctors, and so it's been cool to see your journey. So congratulations. I know this is fairly new for you. When did this come about for you?
So I became interim in September 21, and then was put in the permanent role in 2022.
Very cool. I think it's a good spot for you.
Yes, it's a big job, but it's exactly where I need to be.
Very good. Well, congratulations. So I wanted to bring you on because on my podcast and my channel here, I really like to, like we're kind of talking off camera, is I love to bring people on that have knowledge that is actionable, especially in the area of growth and purpose and spiritual alchemy. And the Monroe Institute has such a really interesting history because was originally founded by Robert Monroe, and I believe one of his seminal books was called The Journey of Souls, if I'm correct. And
I don't think that was the name of it.
What was the name of the book then?
Out of the Body.
Journey Out of the Body. Yeah, Journey Out of the Body. That's correct. Thank you. And you guys have been, I think one of the things you've been best known for is actually kind of demystifying the out-of-body experience, actually teaching and providing experiences for that, which is a really, really fascinating concept. So I thought maybe just to create a little kind of cool interest to start off is like if you could, first of all, anything you want to say about the Monroe Institute and kind of what your its origins, but also a little bit about this out-of-body stuff, because that's just really interesting.
So Bob Monroe, that's what really kicked this off, was he was having these spontaneous out-of-body experiences. And that's the book you read. He journaled everything, ended up with 3 books that were based on his journals and his personal experiences. But he was very curious. One, he was very innovative. He was a businessman who was in radio and wrote and produced several radio shows that were not several, like 48 radio shows in the day. Wow. That some of them were very popular game shows, some of the mystery radio shows. And when TV came along, he was trying to decide what I want to do. Do I want to be in TV, which is radio with a screen, a video, or do I want to do something else? And he had gotten interested in learning why you sleep. He thought that was a really interesting idea. Again, very innovative at the time, because what we thought you did when you sleep at that time was we don't do anything, right? There's nothing going on in sleep except maybe dreams, but there's nothing beyond that.
Yeah. Would this have been like the 60s or so? What?
This was in 70s, like 58
70s,
and
okay.
60s. He was having his experiences. And then in the 70s, he started putting together, he called it I can't even remember the name of it. Monroe Applied Sciences, I think, was the first name. And he had a team already of staff who helped him with the radio production. So he had them create a sleep lab. So he could start can people learn a different language? Can people improve their math while they sleep? But they ran into the problem of getting people to go to sleep.
Okay.
They didn't expect that. Okay, what do we do now? Well, he was used to using tones and different, musical combinations. And so he said, well, let's create something that induces sleep. So that's what started it. Now, he was always, he would be a volunteer for himself. Like anything he was going to have you listen to, he would listen to and experience, more than once.
Is this the, is it binaural beats? Is that kind of like, you see them all over YouTube now, you have like sleep meditations and binaural beats, and where you do like the brain entrainment thing where you have one beat in one ear and the another slightly different, and it creates a third in the mind, and that helps kind of relax the brain.
So here's how that happened. When he first started doing this, trying to induce sleep, there was no binaural beats. It was just sin waves.
Yeah. Okay.
And then as he was getting more successful, he really wanted to stay away from woo-woo, anything woo-woo. So he wanted it to be scientific. So he decided to hire some part-time young researchers to help him put measurements around it, to study it, to test the efficacy of it. And one of those guys was Tom Campbell. I'm not sure if you're with him.
Yeah, My Big Toe guy, right? The
theory of everything.
Yeah.
And then another guy was named Dennis Minorich. And these two young men would come, spend 2 days a week here with Bob. And Dennis read an article about binaural beats. And this was in the 70s. And so what happened, this German scientist learned about this phenomena of binaural beats in the 1830s. So Dennis reads this article and goes, wait a minute, we can bring this into what we're doing. And so that's when the binaural beat modulation started to be used in what was called hemisync. And hemisync still exists today. We're just separate entities. So now what we're doing is an evolution of that. And we believe that if Bob were still here, we would be evolving. And so we're, in that spirit, we're moving into other modulations. So we work with about 5 modulations, binaural beats being one of those. And we have created some very interesting experiences and combinations, recipes as a result. And we're getting into 3D sound as well.
Interesting. I remember you mentioned Tom Campbell, and I believe, and by all means, correct me if I have any details wrong here, because I've heard this once or twice, but it was from him on some of his interviews. And he was talking about his experience with the Monroe Institute. And he had described it, and I thought this was so fascinating. One, and I love how you said that Bob was not into the woo-woo stuff. He really wanted, I really think, I'm very aligned with kind of the Rosicrucian tradition as something inspires me, or, where it's, how do you get science and spirituality to meet, where mystery and science to meet each other instead of it being in an argument with each other. To me, that's where truth with a capital T lies, right? And so I like that approach. I think it's very important and grounded. And so Tom Campbell was talking about how the way they had set up the experiment, because they were having these seemingly out of body experiences, but you kind of run into this problem of proof. Like, how do you prove an experience that's a phenomenon of consciousness? How do you know for sure that you're actually out of the body and not in maybe a lucid dream state, right? And they had, the way I understood it, they had him and there was another scientist. Yes. They had learned how to do this, and so they got into you had these chambers there at the institute that were like Faraday cages, underground, protected from EMFs, and you still have them there.
They're semi-Faraday cages because we have wires going in, and one's underground, one's underground. But yes, they did shared experiences.
Yeah, so they had a point. The point was that they could have an isolated experiences, both of them, and they would have a shared experience outside the body, these two test subjects, Tom and the other scientists, and then they would come and report independently to a third person who would take notes of what their experience was to validate. So in other words, they didn't get to talk to each other, The only way they
Right.
knew that they both shared the experience was after the third person who was able to take their kind of testimony of what happened and overlay that and see that they both did indeed share that experience. I thought that was a really cool experiment. Really cool
Yeah.
experiment.
They did that. They did that. That's after they discovered the binaural beat technology. They started doing those experiments.
Yeah.
And so that is a way. And we have that happen here at the Institute. You will be in a program with other people and you join each other afterwards to discuss it. And they be, I saw you doing something, or
Wow.
let's look at the crystal. And they both have that experience of seeing each other in that state. So we get anecdotal confirmation all the time.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love how I'm so curious. We might spend more time than I thought down this out of body rabbit hole. I think why I like it is because, and I know you actually, funny, I'm going to say it's a gateway to kind of the mystery of it. And you guys have a program called Gateway Program, I believe, or Gateway Experience.
Bob created that program.
Yeah. So we'll get into that a little bit towards the end, where how people can get involved if they want to experience some of these things or start to understand it. But let's talk about, like, this is something let's take how this kind of applies in today's world. Like why would someone want to be interested in these things? What's the point of it? What's the value in it? From a level of a person's, well-being and how they see themselves in the world or in reality. We live in a world right now that, this is my assessment. This is kind of my perception filter on it. And I've seen it that there's been, in one sense, a mass beginnings of like spiritual initiation or awakening, where the vaults of the mystery schools have been opened, and a lot of things that were considered certain practices and understandings that were actually protected and guarded have been actually opened up, and it's just all over the internet now. So it's like shards of glass and all this like swath of like a buffet of spiritual knowledge. And there's a lot of excitement to the initiate. So someone who's first learning this stuff, you're hearing about concepts like manifestation. You're hearing about concepts about how all is mind and raising your vibration, and now, out of body experiences and these things. And I've also seen that along with this has, like with anything, you're going to have all sorts of different relationships with that material. There's not often a lot of structure in how a person can integrate this into their life. It's just kind of like almost an information overload. You get even ego gets involved, and you get like spiritual pride shows in where people kind of like they want to go towards the light and then forget about their shadow, kind of forget that they have one, forget that they're still a human who gets jealous and has all the contracted emotions and all that. So given that kind of like state where there's this, everything's in your face, people are sharing their opinions on social media, and it's just, there's so much for the mind to see in terms of how many variances, nuances there are to how people perceive reality. Well, given that, what do you think, what you guys do with the Monroe Institute and the structure you offer, how can that help a person maybe approach their own spirituality in a way that's maybe more grounded and gives them a linear sense of progression and towards of like learning to engage with these things with wisdom and understanding so that they actually, do extract or gain the benefits of it?
So one thing that Bob wrote about was the Earth life system. So that's what we're living in now as humans. We are living in this Earth life system. And his theory on that was we were sent here for development, for evolution. And we are placed in the right place for us for the best possible growth. So let's keep that in mind, that and the more we can think about life as a school or a game, a game we're playing, I think that can help people who are especially looking at things that are scaring them or, really difficult situations. Now, this is coming from my perspective about this. What I believe is when you start doing these programs or you start doing meditations, it could be one meditation that you do over and over again. It doesn't have to be, going anywhere for a program. It doesn't have to be expensive, but it starts you on a path to be able to communicate with your subconscious mind. And that's the key to this evolution. because we are ruled by so many unconscious beliefs that, that are in our subconscious just because of where we were raised, who our family is, our culture, what we're seeing in
Yes.
social media, and just what we're surrounded by. And then if we can tap into this part of ourselves, and then also you hear about the total self or the higher self, who has the crow's nest view of your life. You're the captain of the ship. You're driving it. But if you're disconnected, it's really can be more challenging. So I think the beauty of this work is that it helps you look at your life through a different lens with more information. And it's information that helps you stay on track, and what you're here to do. And that I see that unfold all the time with people who are using the material, whether it's the app that we have or coming to programs.
Very good answer. I love the thing I want to extract and kind of shine a little light on even more is the subconscious and beliefs, because just a funny personal anecdotal story. When I was like 24 years old, I bought this program called Double Your Dating. Okay, because I wanted to. How do I talk to girls? Yeah. And I was a naive, sexually repressed, good Mormon boy, and I needed some guidance. And what it's amazing looking back on it, how much that shifted my trajectory in life. That it was well done. It wasn't what you might think it was. It wasn't like pickup lines or anything. It was actually very much about internal stuff. And I was taught in that program how to do psychological reframing, and where it's basically where you question your beliefs, and there's this interesting thing that happens, because when you learn how to play with your mind that way, you start to question your beliefs. You realize that your beliefs are borrowed. Much of what you believe, and I'll give like a real clear example for the people watching. So you might be someone who you might be very into like spirituality or personal growth, probably if you're watching to this point. And sometimes, when we have those, say, negative emotions come up, I've noticed that the trick that the ego can play is say, well, I don't want to identify with those emotions. I shouldn't be feeling that because that's not spiritual. That's not the light. I shouldn't be feeling that. So that's a great little trap, because what I notice is if I say, I shouldn't be feeling that, if you have that feeling, if you realize I'm resisting feeling that, therefore you have a belief that I shouldn't be, or it's bad to feel that, then question that, is that true? Can I know for sure that that's true? And you realize that that can't be true, because what's true is that you are feeling it.
Right.
So can you, so then you say, well, who am I? How do I react whenever I feel or think that thought? And you're going to notice that I'm actually feeling something even deeper: shame about feeling it, guilt about feeling it, judgment against the self. And so interesting, you have a lie, something that's not true. You're thinking it's true, and it's causing you to feel shame and guilt and limited. And so you remove your judgment of feeling the jealousy or whatever the thing is you think you shouldn't be feeling, and learn to embrace it. So who would you be without that thought? And then it opens you up to the possibilities of like being able to explore and let yourself experience that. And I think, am I on track here with, is that kind of what you're alluding to, where people need to confront their true self without fear?
Right. And what I love about this work too, it doesn't have to be like a digging in, feeling all the pain, reliving say a trauma that happened, or the grief. So it's really just an unfolding. So your next step might be like, for example, this was probably 2010, and all of a sudden I was in deep mourning and I didn't know why. And so this is what you're talking about, these feelings. What was happening here? Why was I in mourning? Well, when I look back at the journals and my thought process, I see that it was breadcrumbs leading up to, I realized I needed to close the life I was living. And so I had to mourn, but I didn't know. The mourning came ahead of the knowing, of the conscious recognition of what it was. And that's usually what happens with feelings. So if we can start, awareness is the first step of anything. So if we can be more aware when we start having these different emotions, because I've had this happen later in life too, where I would just be like, I am so sad. Why am I so sad? Or I'm feeling like a really bad person right now. Why am I feeling that? But you dig deeper, and you can do that with meditation. You can do it with dream work, and you get answers. And again, it's be the seeker, be the person experiencing the earth life system, and then ask or intend for it to be a growth period for you. Growth periods can be very painful. We need them.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that people sometimes want to bypass and wish wasn't true. But if you look into any spiritual traditions and wisdom traditions, it always was grounded in this concept of like turning lead to gold, or like this kind of alchemical kind of concept, which is where you maybe, if you want to come from, let's say, use the G word, it's that God isn't here to help you get around life, but to get through it, and so it's only diving into that so-called pain that you can find and realize the higher potential or the gold that it actually is. I've noticed sometimes when you really have a breakthrough, you can be crying about something and so upset, and the next second you're laughing.
Yes,
you're laughing about it.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember I wrote a book in 2005, or I published it in 2005, and I wrote about guilt and shame. And I really, in my life, hadn't experienced guilt and shame to the level that I have now. And working through that, like you're saying, that's a really, when you get into those lower vibrational emotions, and that's certainly guilt. Guilt is, I did something wrong. Shame is, I'm a bad person. And when you get into those levels, you have two ways to go. You can either go down into apathy, or you can go up. And again, awareness that this is where I am. Point out what you think is the reason, but then start working your way out of it. And that's where this kind of work can help you, because it's going to help you rise up, to those different levels of understanding. There's a story that I've heard before about an Indian who was in World War II, and he was put in a prison, or he was in Auschwitz, and he was treated very badly, to the point where he was tortured, and they forced him to eat maggots. And when he got out, he was in a coma for like a year. He was that injured. And then he shows up a year later for that to his tribe for healing. And they put him through a ceremony. And in that ceremony, he had a realization, or he had a vision, where he saw that prison guard that was stuffing maggots down his throat. And the voice said to him, I did this to keep you alive. It was the only food I could find, the only protein I could find.
Wow.
So total reframing of a terrible, terrible situation. So, that's an example of someone else, but we can do that with ourselves. With this work, we can get that kind of information and assistance that helps us walk through something and know that, whatever's happening here, it's unfolding. It's in divine timing. It's perfect. So let's just walk through it and grow.
Well, you said something, I really like what you said. You said that this is something we can do for ourselves. I would even say, it says it's something you must, like, only you can do for yourself. It's something only you can do. If I tell you, you need these maggots, these are protein, or they're said, and you're not ready to receive that, then, that's not going to work.
Right. Well, it certainly tortured him, but when he got the answer, how it was happening, it was how he stayed alive.
So let's bring this back around to the fun stuff here, the out of body experience here, and how does that relate to what role does that kind of experience potentially play? And I understand it's not like you must experience it, but I assume there's value in it. It's something I've had lucid dreams. I've gotten to that level where I can do that, but I haven't had I haven't had this experience. So it's an unknown for me. Okay. What what would you say are the benefits of the payoff, and how does it relate to this inner, work with the self in terms of like, for lack of a better term, like the shadow work kind of component thing?
OBEs are interesting because they can just be a joyride. It could have no purpose whatsoever.
Okay.
And so some people approach it that way and use it for, just going to check on things in history, because you can do, there's no time that or construct like that you're dealing with. But then it can also have spiritual and healing property, interactions that you do.
Okay.
So there's a list. If you're familiar with Bill Buellman's work, your audience could Google it and just find like a list of 40 reasons that it's beneficial.
Okay.
To experience this out of body experience. Now, I have a little bit different take on it because a lot of people. I used to teach the out of body class here at Monroe, and a lot of participants come to us wanting the classical out of body experience. That's the one where you see yourself lifting, you look down, and you see yourself, your form, and then you're, projected out. Maybe there's a big vibration that happens first, like a train. I've heard it described as a train noise.
Yeah. Okay.
And then some describe the silver cord that is connecting them. And so most people show up wanting that experience, but what they learn after a week of being here, I don't even know what the percentage is of those who report having a classical experience, but it's not high. It's more about projected consciousness. So it helps you understand it's not really about the out-of-body experience. It's about the outcome of the experience. So even with out-of-body, lucid dreaming, projected consciousness, so that would be, just to give you an example, that's me meditating. Say I'm in my bed and I know I'm meditating, but I also have my awareness somewhere else, whether it's Mars, whether it's talking to my higher self, whether it's two-way communication with my body or my inner child. So that's what I mean by that. So it's definitely can be healing. You can focus on, in an out of body, you can, once you recognize you're in the state, you can talk about or request or make the intention, or that you think about it, that I'm well, that I'm no longer having this condition. Like you can use your imagination, imagine your healthy self, your vibrant self. And individuals have come back from that healed because the mind doesn't know where you are, and it can be influenced by your out of body experience, which has stripped away all your physical limitations. So, that's one example of being able to heal you. It also helps a lot of people no longer be afraid of death and dying, because they understand there's much more out there, and it's not going to end at death.
So what would be, because being that I'm someone who's experienced lucid dreaming, and for those who may not know what that is, that means that if you've ever had a very vivid dream in which you suddenly realize that you are indeed dreaming, you have the experience of waking up inside your dream. There are techniques to get better at that, like dream journaling, for example. You can learn to do these little tests inside the dream if you wake up, like looking at your hands. And I had one where my fingers were turned into fractal fingers. I was like, whoa, but I've had that experience, and I've had one distinct one where it was like very vivid, where I had goals in the dream. I could touch the asphalt. I felt it like I do in real life. I flew around and could feel wind in my face. I spoke to a person in the dream, and I know that everything in the dream is you. In a dream, it's your subconscious mind or mind itself. And when I asked her, I was like, "Who are you?" And she flirtatiously to me, she's like, "I'm you, silly." She told me that, it was just funny. So I've had the lucid dream experience, and what I'm curious about is what is the difference between a lucid dream versus the out of body, which I think is also synonymous with astral travel. People commonly use that term. Okay.
Bob did not want to use the term astral travel because it was already around and already had a lot of connotations tied
it's too
to
woo-woo.
it. So Right. So he's out of body.
Okay.
But the main difference, and you already referred to it, this is my belief, the main difference with a lucid dream and out of body is the lucid dream is you. So when
Okay.
you're having the interactions with the characters, whomever's there, it's aspects of you, just like in a dream language. With out of body, it's a bigger, expansed experience. So it could be with deceased loved ones. It could be with something you've identified as a guide that gives you guidance, total self, which higher self. So it's a broader experience that's not your personality playing out or working things out.
Interesting.
And then you can use the lucid dream. Yeah. You can use the lucid dream to launch you to an out of body.
Yeah, I've heard that.
It's hard for me to articulate how that, the difference. But at least my experience is I knew. So what I would do when I recognized I was in a lucid dream experience, I would say, okay, I'm looking for the hook. This was just my own idea. I made it up, but I'm looking for the hook to get me out of here. And that meant out of body. Mm-hmm. And so I would look around the room and then something would really shine at me, or a person would be calling me over, and then I'd say, okay, you're the hook, or that's the hook. And then I could make the intention, I'm going out of body. And I usually, for some reason, go out of a window. Yeah. You don't have to, you can go through a door, but, so a lot of people find that's an easier way, especially like for you, if you've already started lucid dreaming, that could be the next, you just make the intention that's what you're doing when you become aware.
What is your guys' technique at the Monroe Institute for for how to induce the out of body experience? Like, how do you guys do it?
So we teach a lot of methods, and we introduce Bob's ideas. We introduce Bill Buellman's ideas. We also use a lot of energy work because we believe that's really powerful to help because you're working with the energy body. So you get introduced to, there's like a rope technique. So if you're very physical and tactile, there's rope technique, ladder technique, helicopter. And we also do things with flying, so bird to flight, maybe in an air balloon, magic carpet. So we try to give a lot of different experiences because you'll find the same method doesn't work for everybody, is what we have found. And then over the course of the week, most people are successful or deem themselves successful. And I think they would also, by the end of the week, say, well, if I had projected consciousness, I'm successful. And then they can lock in on those techniques they know work for them and create a practice. And it is a practice. OBEs, remote viewing, lucid dreaming, any of those things that you want to do, it is a practice. You have to work at it. To have it be controlled and be part of your experience. So for me personally, I've had out of bodies spontaneously. I've done remote viewing, but I don't work on it anymore because I've had it. I don't need it. I tend to go with the projected consciousness because I'm getting the same result without all the effort.
Gotcha.
And I've stepped into the energy healing world too. But
in projected consciousness, you had mentioned it earlier, just the line of distinction between that's more of, you said you could be putting your consciousness somewhere that you intend. Like, could you explain that a little bit? Like, what's the difference?
Well, it can be spontaneous. So like if you're here for a program or if you're listening to a meditation, we call them exercises, then you've got these signals that are helping you, reach certain states, holding those states. And then there's usually an intention or purpose behind the recipe mixes. So let's say you pick the one that was out of body, or you pick the one that was exploring the galaxy. You'd have a purpose, and you don't necessarily put your intention there because you go into the meditation, hopefully with an open mind and just allowing whatever needs to unfold for you to unfold. But in the course of that, you might become consciously aware that you are somewhere else. Something else is happening. You're having a conversation. Just for example, when I was teaching a course earlier this year, I had a participant who announced to the group before we started, it was like the first night, that she was having a really difficult time with her mother because of the way her mother treated her, and she needed a miracle. And I think she was living with her too. So in one of the meditations, she becomes consciously aware that she is seeing her mother as a young lady. And she's like an observer, and she's watching her mother. So it's not an out of body. She just was seeing a scene, and she got to see why her mother became the angry, defensive woman that she became, because all her dreams were continually dashed by everyone around her. She grew up in it was in Europe, in a very structured family and culture that punished her for, I think, out of wedlock kind of thing. And so that was a huge game changer, and that was example of projected consciousness.
Gotcha. Okay. So it was like
but it doesn't have to be that way. It could be.
Yeah.
It could be. I know I've had experiences where I'm like, oh, I'm flying around in the stars. It doesn't always have a purpose or or a message that you understand, but it's a chipping away, I think, at the wall.
So I've done in my meditations, there was a little while, I found myself doing this one where I had a spot on the moon, I had a lawn chair, and I would just sit in the lawn chair and stare back at the earth, and it would give me the experience of having the overview effect. Like like an astronaut, like what would that be like? And the longer I dwelled in it, the more like vivid it became.
Yeah.
And you kind of get to a point you're wondering, like, was I there or was I not? If I go there and there's a lawn chair, yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff you can't verify. It's really important to journal, because sometimes when you start putting all the pieces together, say you read your journals from 10 years back, you see the breadcrumbs that led you to where you are. And especially if you're a dreamer, if you work on your dreams and you're a meditator, you get a lot of information that helps you. Now, what I don't want to be told what to do. So it's more about giving me hints and tips that are helping me stay on track or make choices. We have free will. So we don't always have to do or agree to what we're being encouraged to do.
Yeah. I can imagine that, I know I'd like to hear, just to go into like what a lot of the maybe fears and phobias and limiting beliefs are around these concepts. They might say, that's kind of funny. She's saying, Bob wasn't into woo woo, but we're still talking about, projected consciousness, traveling outside the body. A lot of people might have religious programs and things like that. So what would you say to people that are concerned that, look, like I'm going to, what if I come across a demon or, all the scary stuff that they're afraid of happening to them or being misled, or what if the silver cord's cut and I can't come back to my body, or how do you guys address those concerns?
Okay, the first one I'm going to address is the silver cord, because all you got to do is need to go to the restroom and you will come back.
Yeah.
So that's a real easy one. If you're like feeling lost in this experience, you just go, body, where's my body? And that's easy, but there is a fear around that. Yes.
Okay.
Ask me the other questions again.
So people are worried about like confronting like negative entities or, the demonic entities, or even just things that are, how do I trust what I'm being told? There's a fear of being manipulated, controlled, or confronted by something evil.
So my take on it, and I think a lot of us feel this way, is that a lot of this, especially when we're in dreams or we're in meditations, the scary stuff is usually our own stuff, that we're dealing with. And so a lot of that there's nothing outside of you, but it can look really scary. I mean, I've had dreams where I felt like a demonic something was in the basement, but it was really my own stuff. But we also work with energy. We use what we call a reball, a resonant energy balloon, which is a Bob Monroe term. And so that's a form of protection for us, that we make a step for us when we're doing these exercises. I have never had any difficulties personally. Now, Bob has reported, meeting up with some in some of his books, but I do think he came around to, that's just really me. Those are my demons that I'm dealing with, my shadow that I'm dealing with. But I also believe that that's why it's important to be living a better life. The more evolution we do, we're not hanging out in the same vibration as that evil. It can't touch us. And I make that intention. Like my intention is I don't want any information, any input from anyone that is not that is a level that is lower than me. I don't want to hear it. I don't want any exposure to that. So I believe I've locked it out. It's not, it can't happen. I have a barrier. And that's the way I would approach that. And then religious beliefs, or beliefs that, that maybe this is not an area to be delving into. Interestingly enough, we've had priests, nuns, Buddhist monks, we have different, so it's viewed by many as a very neutral way to present the information. And so, we see, we have atheists, we have agnostics, so it's more of a, if you can think about it from a more scientific perspective, that might be helpful.
Yeah, I think it is for me. So here would be my devil's advocate response. If it was true that the things that you fear could show up as like the negative entities, so to speak, potentially, right? And I get that we're in the theoretical right now. We're in the territory of theoretical. Could that also be true that the positive entities are also of your own creation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would think so. And a lot of what we tell people when they approach these, have like in a meditation here, and something scary comes up, we say, well, once you become consciously aware of that, instead of being afraid of it, say, hey, I need you to take on a different form. I need you to be a teddy bear right now, or something this is my personal belief. I believe if it's ugly, mean, looking scary, it's designed to get your attention.
Yeah.
And then once it gets your attention, it doesn't have to remain in that light.
Yeah. Well, I guess what's coming up for me is this really makes sense for me in terms of anything that's in the dream space, like lucid dreaming, because I know that that's me. I've had experiences where I had something ominous, like banging on the door, and I stood at it and I actually just decided to accept it and love it. And then it just stopped banging. And I know you can hug your boogeyman, and they can turn into teddy bears, right? That's an experience, because I see that as happening within the mind. I guess where my question would be is if we're moving now into like, if there truly is an out of body experiences where now you're not experiencing just your mind, but you're in a higher or more expanded reality, you're going to come across entities that have their own consciousness, that have their own intentions. And so those may not be your creations, so to speak, but maybe it's just like in real life, in the waking world, you're going to notice that if you have people that are antagonistic towards you, it's probably because you lack boundaries, and so it's the same. Maybe a lesson applies there, but you're not any less safe than you are here in the
right. Yeah. I mean, and I guess the bottom line for me would be anyone that said, well, it's really, I'm meeting all these scary things, and let's just say in the out-of-body experience, it can't hurt you. It's scaring the crap out of you, but what can happen in that state? It's not there with you in the physical world. So it's something to address. And so that would be either go away, or what do you need to tell me? What do you need to show me? Or go away, because you're in charge. You can go, body, let's go back. You can interrupt it. So cool. It's your show.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah. That's actually very helpful, because obviously I had some of those questions.
Yeah.
So my buddy Jordan, I wanted to plug him. He actually spontaneously lucid dreams a lot, and he's the one who kind of got me into it. And so I started journaling, and I haven't done it in a little bit. I need to get back in the practice, but I have a dream journal, and I'd start keeping a dream journal. But he had sent me some questions. So for his sake, I want to throw you some fun ones. You already answered one of them. If it's easier to go out of the body inside a lucid dream versus like the sleep paralysis techniques. Yeah. So maybe so in that.
Well, I would say that would be a personal experience. So some people might not think it's easier. Okay. It is for me.
So it sounds like for him, because he's so spontaneously lucid dreams, that would be a good gateway for him.
So I would think so. I would certainly try it. That's how I did it, because I was starting to have the lucid dreams.
Gotcha. Okay. So you said if astral projection is can be verified like Tom Campbell did, why do you think that it's not more well known or accepted?
That's a good question, but I think we are seeing that it is becoming more well known and accepted because more of these stories are getting out there. So in the past, though, it's just because it's kind of like the UFO world that's suddenly becoming more mainstream with recognition and notice. I think this is the same way. And some of that's probably fear-based.
Yeah, for sure.
I know there are a lot of people in the early days when Bob was starting to write about it. And then even later, I'd say up through the 80s, 90s, they were afraid to talk about any of this with anyone. So it was it was a hidden experience or a hidden subject. And even when I started coming
here, even though the Army was a little bit interested.
yeah, they were.
Yeah.
But that was for remote viewing. That was for practical reasons.
Yeah.
And even when I came here, I didn't focus on the OBE. I didn't even know, my thought was, well, I want to be more psychic. And books I've been reading and videos I've been watching of people who had come here, that was what I was selectively picking up on. So that was my total focus, to become more psychic, to become more intuitive.
Very cool. You mentioned aliens. That's a great segue. Yes. Can you communicate with the aliens through astral projection, through extraterrestrials?
Well, there are people who believe you can't. And we even have a program here where we have some combinations of recipes that we make that intention. So we have anecdotal stories of those kinds of experiences. But again, how do you prove that? And a lot of times, when I think about the experiences people have, it still could be just aspect of them showing up as an alien, right?
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a story. I had a trainer, and he was a young man at the time, and he was a young father. He was raising his son, and he was conflicted because he had been raised by a man that just was not a good father, not a good role model. So he didn't know what to do. And so all of a sudden he had this, and his eyes were open, but he had this visitor, this shape come down and give him a message. I think it was like telepathic, but helping him know what to do in this situation to be a good father. Well, years later, in a meditation here, he realized that he was taken back there, and he saw that was an older part of himself coming down to give the young man the advice.
Interesting.
You understand?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So that could have been identified as an alien. Yeah. Whatever it was alien. It was, what was it? Not that he did, but so I think, it's hard for us to really know what we're dealing with when we have these experiences. And is it just a form that needs to show up so we learn something or have some kind of communication?
Yeah, it's fascinating times, Rim, because we've watched the whole world move from a consciousness that was based in solely in material science, Newtonian physics. Objects in motion tend to stay in motion, and looking deeper into the physical. And then we poke through to this level, and we have you into the quantum world, where it's like, what is this? What is this shit going on right here, man? And all of a sudden you get this strangeness where there's time breaks down, where you have things are connected. There is no really any such thing as distance in a sense. And now the kind of leading edge theoretical physicists will even start to sound like mystics. Where they're coming up with deductions seems like everything is kind of like some type of everything is a in some way of a simulation. They'll use that word because that's kind of a modern nomenclature we can relate to a technology as to simulate, or that it's a like a matrix, or it's everything is like a thought, like a mind, which brings us back to Hermetic principles, from thousands of years ago, which I think is fascinating. So we're in this really interesting era where there's a convergence, and a lot of like old beliefs that have to be let go of at the same time. And I think I'm bringing that up because, if, we have this experience as like physical, the physical reality, if those things are true, is just our consciousness tuned into a certain bandwidth or density of of mind. And so if you're projecting, so to speak, you're really just exploring consciousness, exploring maybe, a different bandwidth of things, something that's of a different frequency than being in the purely the physical. And it is fascinating because you kind of get these blurred lines between everything, because it can't really be like a clear, layer cake, I guess, it's kind of like a blur, like it's just all kind of blended together in a sense at different levels of like density or something. It's really fascinating. And I can understand why people could feel a little disrupted by it, because it can like challenge maybe, certain religious notions. But I think, and this is where I'd like to ask you from, with all your experience with all this, you sound like, you're obviously not like woo woo. I don't even see any crystals behind you. I'm sure you got some in there. I know you got a big one there. Yeah. I know you guys, I'm not against them. I have some behind me too, but I'm saying you're not like the typical, you're not trying to look like a typical, in any way like hippie or woo woo or any way like, and I think I want people to know this can be a very grounded and rational approach to exploring the self. And given all your experience with it from a very personal level, like what do you think the biggest blessings, benefits to your life that this journey has provided you as an individual?
I think it's about self-evolution. And I can see the progression, and I think it sped up that process for me. That's at least my belief. But it also puts you in a place where when we're viewing the same scene of the world. Let's just say that I'm looking at what's happening over, in Iran. I'm looking at Ukraine. I'm looking at my grocery bill. All these things that are concerning me, and I can, because of this work, I can look at it from that perspective of everything is as it should be. I can trust that everything's okay. And that's just a total different perspective to live in, to experience life in. Doesn't mean it's easy all the time. Just like I was talking about the grief in the morning. And then there's hardship. COVID was a mess. That was a hardship. But it's a ability to trust that everything's okay, to accept individuals as they are. So I just see it as needed work.
Yeah.
To do.
So it makes you. I think what I'm sensing is that you're just more at peace with what is. With life and your role in it.
Right.
It's beautiful.
And one of the things I say to myself all the time, because just like you mentioned some emotions earlier. Maybe there's jealousy that all of a sudden comes up. Well, I don't get picked for something, or I really wanted it to go that way and it didn't. So my new affirmation is, I've been using it for about 10 years, but it really works. And that is, what's mine is mine, what's not is not. And
That's
you just
good.
repeat that to yourself, and you quickly move past whatever it is you didn't get, or that you thought you were supposed to get. And so I highly recommend that affirmation to everyone. It'll change your life.
That's really good. I want to totally borrow that. You're, again, back to anecdotal here. I have to bring this up just because it's really funny. I told you I'd bought that dating course when I was 24. And about 10 years later, so I was 34, I had a lot of experience. And it resulted in me actually leaving my religion, everything. I did like a big, transformation. It's crazy. But I remember when I was first starting that journey, I might have asked a couple girls, like, what do you need to do to talk to girls? And they're like, just be yourself. I was like, shh, that doesn't work. I'm myself right now, and 10 years later, I was like, oh, just be yourself. Because really, in order to truly be yourself, you do have to accept what is. Just like you said, what's mine is mine, what's not is not. And I had noticed when I let go of like wanting a girl, and I just started enjoying just the now moment with her, all of a sudden my results were like 10xing, you know what I mean? Like I noticed that stuff would happen. So there's a lot of areas of your life where that applies,
Right.
no matter,
Yeah. And
what area it is.
I'll say something else too. It helps you present to the world more authentically,
Yeah.
because you don't need to wear the mask anymore. And you can be the same person in all roles of your life, which a lot of people are not. And so, that it really helps with self-integration and being who you are all the time, being fully present as you all the time.
Perfect. I love it. So for this last little segment, I want to segue into what you guys do at the Monroe Institute. And the way I'd like to frame this is this: if I'm a person watching this today, and I am seeing a mental health crisis in the world, I might be experiencing anxiety, depression, I'm seeing wars happening, there's mass cancel culture, everyone's getting triggered, I'm looking at people who supposedly have these happy lives on social media, I don't feel in my power. There's inflation. There's all these challenges in the world, and I feel overwhelmed by that. I'm want to be in a relationship, but I'm not. Whatever. I'm not feeling at peace with what is. Mm-hmm. What can the Monroe Institute offer a person to help them to begin to regain their power and find peace within their soul again, despite what's going on?
Yeah. Right. So the quickest, easiest way is to access our Expand app. And It has many meditations. It's free. There's a free version of it, and then there's a subscription version of it. Again, it's the subscription for a year is under $100. So it's a reasonable, but you can also start with the free version. And it's Apple Play or Apple Store or Google Play is where you find that. And so there are categories there. So when you first sign up for it, you're asked what your focus is. So if it's you're needing peace, you're needing more joy, there's a category for that. If you're more interested in the esoteric side, the OBE, the bilocation, those kind of things, there's a category for that. So it covers a lot of purposes. And that's what I love about our technology. We're very purpose driven. So when we put these different frequencies together, these different modulations, it's with a purpose in mind that helps facilitate you getting to that space, whether it's creativity, whether it's sleep, whether it's concentration, whether it's pain management. So that's a good place to start. And even if you just listen to some things when you're sleeping, I believe that's very powerful because you're still having that experience of the technology.
Yeah, you gave me some access to the app, so I've been playing with it a little bit, and I listen. I use YouTube a lot for stuff, but I've been liking I like that there's I like the specific use case kind of meditations that there are, and how someone can be even staged so they progress,
right?
Which is really interesting. So it's kind of like you're getting to do it at home.
Yes. Right. But I was going to say that there's some 5-minute ones, 10-minute ones, so it doesn't have to be a long drawn out ordeal. And there's one called Releasing What No Longer Serves You that I actually wrote and voiced. And you don't have to, waddle in the crap about what it is. You just are saying, okay, when we go through life every day, we have stuff happen to us that weighs us down, whether we realize it or not. And there was a story that I know about of a gentleman who started doing something similar to this with another exercise, but it was the same process, release what no longer serves you, every day. And at the end of those 30 days, he had brown spots that disappeared, and he was able to travel again where he had been he was about to be put in an assisted living home.
Wow.
So take 30 days, taking all that, what no longer serves me, don't have to know what it is, but just intentionally saying, let it go. Was very helpful. So it has very practical uses, but it also can be more esoteric and exploration. That's really what we started with, was the exploration.
Very cool. So it's called the Expand app, and it's available on the Apple App Store as well as the Google Play App Store as well. So both Android and Apple. Very
Mhm.
good. Okay, cool.
And
What I'll
we
do is
also
I'll put a link to that
we
as well. Yeah.
and we also have community groups in the app, so you can look around and see what groups topics might interest you. And even for the free version, you can be a part of a group.
Very cool.
So that's a step you could take. Because then you'd have people who would correspond with you. You know, you say, "Hey, I'm having this issue," or "What do you recommend?" And you'll get responses.
Very cool. Well, I know you have some CEO stuff to do today. You need to get
Yes.
to. But before I let you go completely, are there any questions that that I should have asked that I didn't, that you'd love to get off the chest?
Let's see. I really can't think of anything. I think we did a good job of covering, what we do here. So I would just say I would encourage people to start on this journey. I will say one thing; it just came to mind. What I
Perfect.
think dream language is dream analysis is very important. It's something you can do by yourself.
Mhm.
I did it for years I read books, and it helps create a language for you when you're in these meditations so that you can understand, interpret the information that's coming to you in a meditative state. And I found that a powerful way because I think you can be given information, you can be given symbols, just like in dreams, and you don't necessarily have a way to put meaning to them. But if you really work
Mhm.
with this dream analysis, you can build that language where if my tooth is falling out, and I have a dream about that, then I know that I'm losing my personal power. I'm giving my personal power away. So you
Yeah.
can so that way the higher self, guidance, whatever you think is helping you, can give you information that you can understand and interpret. So
I had a dream the other night. I cracked my phone on my birthday. It's got this like crazy
oh,
line, but I had a dream like 2 nights ago that my phone I was looking at it and it just broke in half, fell into two
oh,
pieces. I haven't figured out what it means yet. I have a
well,
subconscious desire to get a new phone, I think. I think that little line is bothering me more than I was willing to
oh,
admit.
those things drive me crazy. Yeah, I want to fix them. The way, and some would say, well, how do I start this? What I did, and I can only tell you my story, is I got a dream dictionary online that I thought was pretty
Okay.
good, and so then I would read like if it was a rose, go to rose. If it was pink, go to pink. Read it, and only take from it what resonates with you.
Okay.
Don't go down the road of superstition, because a lot of those dream languages books and
Yeah.
resources have, like, oh, that means financial disaster. Well, cut
Hmm.
all that out. Oh, that's not what it
Yeah.
means. And then that's how you can start building that recognition of what that means for you.
Yeah.
Like
Reminds me
even
of
red light.
tarot a little bit. Tarot is not literal. It's meant to be, it's contextual.
Mm-hmm.
What about this? So I noticed when I was doing my dream journal, one of the things I would do is I'd write a little bit about kind of like, what did I see or experience? Like I had a dream about a tornado coming at me one time, and I was in my car that I was, had when I was like 19, and I was going down a road I was familiar with near my house, and I had this moment where I had to decide, am I going to run off? There was a deep ravine to my left, and I could just crash the car, but I would also escape the tornado, or I could really focus on the road in front of me, even though it was dirt and winding, and just keep going and probably get out of its way. But it would require really, focus, concentration, really focusing, and not letting my fear get to me. And as I was writing it down, I noticed if I took my dreams and said what happened, and I'd write what emotions that I felt.
That's good
Fear,
practice.
urgency, need to focus, whatever. And then I'd say, where is that showing up in my waking world? And I was like, oh my God, I realized I had stuff going on in business, whatever. And I was a little uncertain, and I felt like there was a tornado coming, and I needed
Right.
to focus and stay on the course. Was like my higher, almost like
Right.
it's like a tarot card. This is like a message, it's like a metaphorical, allegory, it's like giving you this like meaning. That's at least how it worked for me, noticing
Yeah. And
that. So
I had a similar one. I was going through something very difficult here with an employee, and it just looked like it was just a terrible situation. And how was it going to end? And it could have ended terribly, disaster, or it could be okay. So in the dream, I'm in the back seat, but I'm in a car, somebody else is driving, and I noticed that we're really close to the edge of the road. And then I noticed there's a huge drop off. And the driver goes, "Don't worry, we're going to be okay." And then all of a sudden we're not okay. And we're headed down. Like we go off the road. And I close my eyes. And as I'm going through this process, I'm just telling myself to relax. Everything's going to be okay. And then I kept doing that. And finally I'm going, this is taking forever, for us to hit the ground. And I opened my eyes, and we've already landed. We were all safe. The car was fine. And so that happened in April, and the outcome of this thing was in May. So that gave me so much comfort from April to May, because it was like, don't worry. It's going to be like you're not even going to notice you landed. But
That's
it looks
cool.
Scary. Yeah. It looks like you're about to die here.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah, dreams are fascinating. They're fun. Carl Jung was very much into dream analysis, the famed psychologist. He was a protege of Sigmund Freud.
Yeah, another book, a little book, is by Morton Kelsley. And I think it's I can't remember the name, but you can just Google it, The Silent Mind. And it's just a really thin read for people who don't want to have to look into it a whole lot. But it was my beginner, and I felt like it was really good information to get you started.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, I'm so glad we got to have this conversation, and I would love to, in the future, every now and then, maybe check in with Monroe Institute and see how you guys are doing. If you got anything new, what's going on in the world, it'd be great to catch up. And I know, I think my buddy Jordan and I might work something up. It'd be fun to come out and give a visit. Go touch the big crystal. Yeah.
Yes.
Get in that Faraday cage.
Yes. Arrange that. Yeah. Well, you have my phone number.
I do. Well, I so much appreciate your time, and I appreciate what you guys are doing. This was it was really cool to hear. Just for me personally, I value people who've created some type of system or process, recipes, so to speak. Like, so you can take all the ingredients of spiritual knowledge and mysticism, but actually create recipes with them that you can bake up some results in your life. Because if they don't achieve results, what's the point, So I appreciate that.
And that's the other thing I want to say. If Bob Monroe were here and you were talking to him about experiences, he'd go experience it for yourself.
Yes.
So that's what we're all about. Yes, I'll tell you some of my experiences because I'm talking to you in this podcast.
Sure.
But I want you to go have the experiences. I want you to come tell me what you experienced. And so that's what's so beautiful about this, because it's not just somebody up here chatting away, telling you this can be real. It's for, we want you to experience it for yourself.
Only you can tell yourself that you needed the maggot.
Right. Exactly.
And on that note.
Right.
All right, Allyn. Well, I'll let you get back to it. And so once again, I appreciate it. For all of you watching, if you have any questions or comments for Allyn and the Monroe Institute, go ahead and leave those in the comments, or any ideas or topics you'd love to see on the show. If you haven't liked or subscribed, absolutely do that. This certainly helps the show to get out there and for other people to see it as well. And it's an easy way to show a little support. And I'll go ahead and pop a link to the Monroe Institute website as well here for people to go find. Because I know you guys have is ways that they could participate, maybe live, or go visit you guys and do some more advanced retreats and things. I'll let you get back to it. Thank you, Allyn.
Okay. Thank you.